Hey traders, welcome to our crypto market update. We're going to be going over cryptocurrencies, but more or less looking at first initially the risk on, risk off, what is going on, because we did have a pretty big dump in the equities market, and that is the main thing that we're going to be looking at the start of the video. And we can see when we look at the overall market, this is VT, it's the Vanguard World Equity Index, huge gap down, and then let's see just how far it dropped today. Move of around 3.27, 3.3-ish%, which is, if you're looking at an index this size, a very significant move. I just put some key levels of resistance, turned into support, massive gap down. We could get a inside candle tomorrow, but overall, that's a pretty significant move, and we did see the risk off environment kind of fill into the crypto market and FX, where more of the safe haven currencies like Japanese yen, Swiss franc definitely got a lot of demand, a lot of buy volume compared to some of the risk on assets like AUD, New Zealand, and some of the more exotic pairs as well. So in terms of what's going on globally, definitely there's seemingly to be a shift in psychology and overall desire to take on risk. We'll see how that goes. That was a huge gap down. And this is the Russell 2000. So this is the small caps. Let's just take a look at the daily chart. And this is the E-mini Russell 2000 contract. So it's going to be running 24/7 or 24/5, I guess. But huge move down. And it broke below the recent higher high, which definitely signifies that the bears have taken a lot of strength to the downside. If we are going to get a pullback to around 1450 at this previous level of support, we can see back in June, August, October, key level of support before we did break to the upside, breaking this nice little continuation pattern here, or base, breaking the resistance. And let's just zoom in here for this potential, because I think we'll get some level of a bounce. But it does look as aggressive as this move to the downside here. And this is this little bearish flag that we would be looking for if we are looking for continuation. But yeah, that is a pretty scary move if you're a bull. So let's just draw our outline for a potential ascending support that we could be looking at. And that's basically going to be the two ascending supports. That would be the areas of confidence that would be breaking if the price does inevitably move to the downside. And then we, like I've already said, around 1350, 1360 is a pretty key level within this structure. And then we will just quickly look at some fib levels. Let's just switch to the daily really quickly and get our fib level from high around 1700 to low, which is around 950. And we can see it bounced off that 786 really well, perfectly. And we may get that 618 if we just switch to the 2-day. Not really a perfect confluence with that 618 with the left and right shoulder. That would have been really nice to see, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be absolutely perfect. But what we would be looking for in order to see a potential head and shoulders, which would be a reversal pattern, would be the price needing to get to around this level here at that 1450 key level of resistance right here, which was initially the left shoulder. And then we can see that this would be the right shoulder, and this would be the head up here. The breakout zone would be this key level, and that's what you'd be looking for in order to get a high probability situation move to the downside, in my personal opinion. So, we've seen these sell-offs before, and they have recovered. We don't really see a big wick to the downside yet, so I do see it continuing. Although if it does hold this zone, we could see it. We could see a move, but it's not really losing any steam here. Let's just jump to the 1 hour, because that is a nice time frame to look at for an execution. Yeah, we'll see where it holds, because right now, very valid zone. I don't expect it to just go down without any sort of fight from the bulls, so we could get some sort of continuation pattern where you get a little bit of a wedge, something along the lines of that. But that was a massive impulse push to the downside, signifying strength from the sellers. So I'm thinking a bit of a bounce for tomorrow or the next couple days. We'll see what some of the other markets are doing. The VIX took a pretty big pop today, definitely shown by the increase in volatility. And yeah, if it continues, we're going to see this absolutely spike here, because we can see that the last time it went from around $11 to around 61. So some pretty massive gains to be had, although this is a very volatile instrument if you are going to be using it. Not really going to look at the S&P. Quick discussion. We're back at the previous level of resistance at around 2970. Key level that we were really having a difficulty passing, and then we inevitably did. Broke, retested, had some nice wicks to the downside, indicating buy pressure to push the price back up, closing the candle bullish, and then we got that big solid rally that was almost like a parabolic move for the past handful of days here, and this is just selling pressure. As of now, we are still holding above a key level of previous resistance, new support, so in my opinion, it's a little bit too quick to assume that it will continue to the downside. So in the short term, yes, investors are a little bit worried, a little bit more of a risk-off situation. You see equities, you see FX emergings increase, you see equities go down, and you're seeing crypto go down as well. I view crypto, in my opinion, still as a risk-on asset. It's a speculative investment. Yes, it's been the best investment in the last 10 years, but you got to look at it objectively. It's very volatile. It's not a currency yet. It is a speculative investment that, in my opinion, is like digital real estate, but it's moving a lot up and down. And people used to speculate off it, which I do as well. So now let's jump into crypto. We've discussed kind of world equities, looked at volatility, looked at increasing move to the downside. Thinking there will be some level of a pullback here tomorrow, but that's going to be for tomorrow to decide. Quick look at bonds. The yield is going down. People are going into the bonds after the big sell-off. So if this actually breaks this confluence zone, this ascending level of support on both the 30-year and 10-year, and this key horizontal level, which was a previous resistance turning into new support, that could be the breaking point for the bulls, and we could get another move to the downside in the yield already so close to zero. So we'll see how that goes. Could form a double bottom if it does halt at the previous low there, but that's definitely very bearish from the breakout point to the low, in my opinion. All right, let's now look at the daily chart of BTC, and let's get our snip and discuss what is happening. Also, we also have a volume indicator, Performante's average Bitcoin volume indicator. One of our teammates made that really, really interesting. Thank you very much, Mitch. And it basically gets the largest exchanges in the cryptocurrency market and averages out the volume in order to get a single data set that you can more or less trust better than any single data set, because you're getting an average of the largest exchanges that retail cryptocurrency investors and traders use, which is very handy. So what do we see here? We did have a squeeze that the price was able to hold, resistance turning into support, along with the $9,300 level of support that the price is still holding. Let's just make this a little bit larger. So this $9,300 zone right around here is going to be a major level that the price needs to pass in order for me to look into more of a short exposure type of trade. As of now, we've been holding this. This was a very significant candle to the downside that held the $9,300 level, and right now the price is yet to pass it. On the daily, we have about a minute and a half left, so it's going to be closing by the time I finish talking about the daily chart. So the next handful of days will be important, and I think this will be in high correlation with the overall equities market. So basically look at the equities market and you're going to have the same move or a similar move. I really do not think that BTC is going to go to the downside and the equities market will hold and move to the upside, and vice versa. I just do not think it'll happen. We can look at correlations after if we want to, but it's around, I believe, 0.30 in the last 90 days. So that's pretty high. And it's out of 1 to -1, and 0 is the neutral, where there's no real correlation at all. So it's at 0.3. So looking at completely different markets, in my opinion, that's pretty high. And in a 90-day period, I think 32.32 is the highest point of positive correlation that BTC has had with the SPX, which is the S&P 500, largest 500 companies in the United States. So right now, I still view this $9,300 zone as a support, and we also have confluence with that zone, not just horizontally speaking, but also looking at previous resistance that held this ascending wedge squeeze. That wasn't a very well made. There we go. That's a lot better. We had this ascending wedge. Yes, initially, I 100% did think that we were going to break to the downside, but we did not. We broke to the upside, and after this massive move right here, breaking the 7,700, I did change my bias, and since then I've been kind of basically looking at a consolidation here. We do know that we have a lot of resistance right here. This was that 40% move back in October of 2019, where we broke this horizontal level of consolidation to the downside. A lot of people were thinking short to the 6K zone, which is around here, which inevitably does make sense because you have massive sell-off, volume distribution or volume redistribution phase, and then you're going to get your next leg if you're just going to be looking at that. So it inevitably did make it to the zone that made sense, but in the meantime, it absolutely wrecked some shorts with this huge move to the upside. I think by the time it was kind of here or here, it was just a short squeeze where shorts had to get out of the market. They had to buy BTC in order to get out, and that was the massive parabolic spike that happened after this point probably. And then we had our descending zone right there, squeeze the price, push to the downside, pullback, and then we had our massive sell-off. Not really explaining the current situation, but in terms of how important this zone is, that's what I wanted to clarify. So what we see right now is a lot of sell pressure. So definitely, and just in terms of the price action, it looks more bearish with the huge rejection right here, big rejection right there, and big rejection right there. It's just looking like there's a lot of sell pressure with how much A, wicks there is on the weekly, and B, the level of rejection that we're getting to the downside from the sellers, and not really seeing that level of buy pressure you're wanting to see on the way back up. And also looking at the volume to the downside right there, we can see that there is diminishing buy volume coming into the market. Initially, we saw a lot of buy volume with that huge bounce. Definitely makes sense. And then on the run up, we did see buy volume, and then we saw that huge super spike there with a significant amount of buy volume. So there was initially, in this zone where we were trending up, we did have more buy volume than sell volume. So the moves to the upside had more buy pressure than the moves to the downside where we saw sell pressure. So in terms of volume distribution, volume accumulation, this was volume accumulation. Buyers were buying and holding BTC to push it to the upside, thinking that it will appreciate over time. Now what do we see? Well, we definitely see increasing sell pressure and not much buy volume, especially since that initial smack down. Since that move to the downside, we've seen very, very little buy pressure, really inching the price up. Even when we had that big move to the upside, there was not that much buy or sell pressure, really. It ended where it started. So not great to see. So let's zoom into the more recent price action, just looking at the wicks here, because that will tell you quite a bit about what happened. So daily chart, really important key area or key time frame to be looking at. Initially, this looked a little bit more bullish. We had a huge wick to the downside, holding the price at a key zone right here. We got a nice ascending triangle, a little bit of a squeeze at the end of the bullish move. And then what led me to believe initially that there was a little bit more buy pressure is the fact that, yes, we did initially try to get slammed down by the buyers, but there was a tremendous amount of, or sellers here, this was the sellers trying to push the price down. There was a tremendous amount of buy pressure indicated with these long wicks to the downside, right here holding a strong level of support. So in terms of price action and level of buy pressure, it was significant, and also just taking account to the level of momentum that we had going into the BTC halving. Since then, we made a higher low, so that definitely was great to see, although we did get in a little squeeze here and then it moved down. The sell-off got held with a higher low, so then we were able to draw this zone, the candle closures, which is a type B. And then we had a higher low here, so we drew a nice ascending zone. So then we had a squeeze, which was great to see against this key zone. So we had a high, lower high, lower high, lower high. So then we connected those right there. And then we had a huge move to the upside. And this was definitely good. It looked good for the bulls initially, but we held there. Really looked awesome on the daily chart, but really the next candle instantly smashed it down very, very aggressively. And in my opinion, that was definitely manipulation. Something else to note is there was way more sell pressure than there was buy pressure. So people are getting out more than they're getting in towards the upside. And then we did get a long wick to the downside right here, indicating that there was buy pressure pushing it up. And then we also see a long wick yet again. So we're seeing these long wicks to the downside. Huge one right here. Another one right here. And you are getting them to the upside. This was definitely a significant one. So the fact that we had this wick and then in the next 2 days had the massive sell-off, that's definitely telling me there's a shit ton of sellers right in this zone. So this is a lot of sell pressure here. We know that for a fact. So price usually goes in the path of least resistance. What I'm going to be looking for, let's just take all of this off and start off fresh, is I'm personally looking to see the $9,300 zone break before even looking for any sell. Oops, I just dropped my mouse. Give me one moment here. I just smashed it across my desk. All right, so we're looking for that $9,300 level to break initially. That's, in my opinion, the level that I'd like to see pass before really looking at any sell pressure. We have validation of potential sells to be had below this zone initially from the larger time frame in terms of just looking at the confluence of equities, risk off environments, and crypto going down, and also looking at that large weekly structure that we have. We're right at the top of the structure in terms of the symmetrical triangle. We got a huge rejection with a big wick indicating that sell pressure was able to push it back close to the open, closing it not too much higher than the open. Let's just check here. 2.3% or 2.8%, almost 3% for the close, and then we got up to around 10%. So definitely it got rejected pretty aggressively, and then this next candle is definitely showing that it's really, really looking difficult to be bullish at this point. And we'll talk about the next zone that we're going to be looking to potentially break, which is the 85, and we'll talk about that on the daily a little bit more clear. So like I said, first part is 9,300. I'd like to see that break. Second part is going to be the $8,500 zone, because this is going to create our consolidation phase. So this is going to be either the volume reaccumulation phase if you are bullish, or it's going to be the volume distribution phase if you are bearish. So ideally, in a perfect world, what you'd be looking for if you were looking for the highest probability trades is you'd be looking for a break with the candle closure below this zone on the daily, because you do not see a candle closure on the daily or even on the 4 hour or anything. You just see wicks here. So you want to see candle closure, whatever time frame you're looking at. If you're looking at 4 hour, 6 hour, you want it to be on the large time frame to see a candle closure, not just wicks. Once you see that, you're looking for confirmation. So you want some move to the upside, retesting the previous support, indicating this is going to be a new key level of resistance for the price. So once you see that validation, you could see an ascending triangle, you could see an ascending wedge, you could see a channel, whatever the case may be. You're looking for that exhaustion phase after the massive impulse push to the downside. That, in my opinion, is going to be the highest probability situation that we're going to find in order to look for sells for BTC. In another perfect world, and even in a more perfect world, you'd ideally see a long bearish engulfing candle with a wick to the upside, closing almost at the very, very end of the candle closure, and then a slow crawl up, and then a big slam down. In my opinion, that is going to be the highest probability situation for a short. In terms of smaller time frames, yes, we could be looking at the 93 $280, $500 zone. So we could be looking at this zone here to potentially this zone here. Do have to take into account this potential ascending zone that could be a higher low for the price to hold. But in terms of the probability for a wick to hit it, I think that's a pretty high probability because that's a lot of sell pressure. And if you're especially trading on like BitMEX, there's a lot of wicks that are way extended beyond normal exchanges on that particular derivative exchange. So that's my initial view of the daily chart. Let's now go to a smaller time frame. We're going to go on to a 4-hour. And we just see this nice gradual steepness. Let's just draw that in right here. And once that broke, that's definitely sellers taking control, and we'll just make that green. We're still holding this $90, $300 level. It's a zone, not a particular exact price point. So I still look at that as it holding. But at the end of the day, we get a tremendous amount of sell pressure, not much buy pressure really recently at all. We got an attempt to move to the upside here, but that got rejected very, very quickly. And then we just got an absolute, not capitulation, but a huge move down here. Considering the amount of consolidation that we've had recently. So we've had a contraction in consolidation. I think we will have an expansion phase. In my opinion, there's a higher probability at this point to go to the downside, but we've indicated two key areas that could be used to determine a level where you could have a retest appear, and that would be a high probability situation in my view. Not really going to get into the 1 hour because it's just too really small of a time frame at this point to be looking at trades, in my opinion. We'd be looking for, let's see if we're just seeing what we're working with right now. You'd be looking for something along the lines of this, where you get maybe 3-4 touches of a previous or of a new support, creating a series of higher lows. You'd ideally want to see this hold horizontally or slightly ascending. And then once you see that crack move to the downside, that's going to be the entry for this particular price action pattern. So it's definitely way too early to determine a move just yet, or even determine a structure. But that's going to be what we're going to be looking for. So that is BTC. Let's now look at the BTC dominance, because we haven't looked at that in a little bit. This is, oh, that's not it. This is going to be right here. So what I currently see, we've been talking about this for a little while, is a very, very tight squeeze occurring where you have this very strong series of higher lows, hold the price up, and you are currently seeing a descending resistance. 1, 2, 3. Hold the price, making lower highs. So that's basically the squeeze we see right now. If BTC does move to the downside and we get a sell-off, this is going to move up, meaning that alts are going to fall further than Bitcoin. If you are looking at shorts, that is going to be an option for you if you are using exchanges that offer that service. But on average, alts will drop further than Bitcoin if there is a significant sell-off. So that's just something to note if you are looking at that. But in terms of what's happening right now, not much has happened. We're just consolidating deeper into the apex of the pattern, and we're just going to see what it does. We're not going to trade this or anything. This is just to analyze, should we be in more alts or should we be in heavy in BTC? And right now I have been more heavy in BTC and haven't really been looking at alts as much, because just looking at the chart, it hasn't broke down yet. So timing is a pretty important factor in it. Now we're going to look at the upside down world. So this is Bitcoin inverse. It's good to look at to gain some perspective. Some people might have a bias if you're a perma bull or a perma bear. Looking at this may help you get some perspective as to which way the price could go, looking at the price action, because looking at it upside down just kind of shifts the way you look at the price action some way. That's how I found it anyways. So what do we see right here? Key level of support. We do have to consider that. And we see that it's basing right here. So we see a low come in and a lower low come in. But we're seeing these bases form, which is really good if you're looking to make a move towards the upside, right? You see a base form right here as well. So you see a nice little series of lower lows, and then you get a base where you hold a series and hold a horizontal level of support, and then you get kind of a slow moving cup sort of formation. That's a nice base. Gold did it, Bitcoin did it. Looking at the large time frames, and you're kind of seeing it right here. This could be the lowest low of the base here. Like we got this to be the lowest low of the previous base. This could be the lowest low of this base. So then this is the next higher low. So you could be seeing something like this. I think this is a large potential breakout zone. We see that this is a very small one. Like here, I think this is a pretty large one where the breakout area is the 8,500. 8,500. That's going to be the breakout zone that we're looking to see break. If you are looking to have the highest possible dependability for your setup, or the highest strike rate, or the highest win-loss, whatever you want to call it, that is the point you want to break in order to get your nice potential squeeze, potential descending wedge, descending channel, descending triangle. You could even get an ascending triangle if it's really bullish, where you get a huge spike up, you get a slow consolidation move up. That's great to see. So we're going to be looking for that, but in terms of the larger time frames, I think it's still a little bit early in order to call it bearish just yet. But like I said before, $8,500 zone. And if we are going to get something similar, I don't know how bad it could be, but let's just play around with the historic data here. So bars pattern is a great tool. We can see that if we go like this, we can actually recreate previous structures and lay them out to new structures. So if we're just using this little cup right here as the breakout point, and we're going to make it really large just to play around with it, I don't think it'll be that bad. There we go. That's basically what you'd be looking for. Obviously, you're never going to get a sell-off that bad. Oh my gosh. Yeah, let's just take that out right now. But anyways, that's the potential there in my personal opinion in terms of the inverted chart. We went a little bit wonky. I didn't know that was going to be that big of a super spike, but kind of see a similarity there. I think 86 is going to be that main zone, and we do see within the smaller time frame, we did break out of this nice little wedge to the downside, this descending wedge. Let's just draw it right here. So initially we saw a resistance, and we saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, really well respected all throughout that zone, and then we see initial support 2, 3, and then we got that mid-range zone right around there. So overall, it's a pretty well-respected descending zone, contracting the volatility. We are looking like it could move to the upside here because it did break this descending zone. and it did break this minor level of around 93 that we did talk about, but as of right now, not really going to be doing anything at the immediate moment. I want to see if this is going to hold. Let's just bring this down a little bit more. I just want to see if this is going to hold the previous level of resistance seen all throughout right here. Let's just get our arrow. All throughout right here, resistance, huge wick to the upside, but it held this key zone at around 93. If we do get a retest at this zone, I think that could be a decent trade here. If you are looking for shorts, basically, let's just get our short. You know, you could be looking at potentially just to the around 85, 86 zone. And then if you're going to do a potential 2-to-1 right there, that would be in line with your risk just being underneath the previous major candle that did push it to the upside, which is the recent low on a smaller time frame there. So could be an opportunity to gain some exposure to the downside, and then if it does move to the down or move to the upside with some aggression all the way up here, that would definitely indicate that we could get another sell-off that could push the price another again to the upside, which then you'd want to leave some of your position on here. So we'll see where it goes. I'll see how the pullback is. I'll see how the 1 hour looks and play it from there, basically. So let's look at one more thing. And this really hasn't updated in a while. Let's just, we don't really need that right now. This hasn't updated in a while, but this basically shows the cost to mine 1 Bitcoin. And it's been very flat recently. I don't even think it made a move yet. Let's just take that off. How do you find it? You go to your indicators, and then you go and search. Oh, is it in favorites? Not really sure why it's not working right now. But you'd search that. I think this might not. I might have to refresh this page. But anyways, not really going to look at that, I guess. Next one we're going to talk about is Ethereum. Quickly going to look at some questions that's come in to see if there are any. Not a whole lot worth going over right now. Okay, it's cool. So let's go back to the daily here and understand that we are at a pretty important level of resistance. We see an initial support multiple times turn into a resistance, turn into 1, 2, 3. So we know that there is going to be a decent amount of sell pressure there. We see that there was a lot of sell pressure in the previous rejection off of this zone. And then when we are looking at the larger time frames, we can see this ascending zone creating a nice squeeze within the structure. So we see candle closure, candle closure, candle closure, and then we see a wick, and we see wick, candle closures, lots of B's and A's for candle closures, which we really like to see. Very, very tight consolidation here, where we know there's a lot of sell pressure with this projection zone, and we have a nice ascending level of support. So it's looking like there has to be a decision in either tomorrow, today, the next day, and then in the short term here, in the next couple days it seems. And when we do get into the smaller time frames, let's just get rid of this little squeeze right here and just work with our horizontal zones that we can see within the chart. The obvious place to potentially look for a short would theoretically be at the retest, but I would say it is definitely a little premature to be looking at any shorts until it breaks this ascending zone. And if you're really wanting to be careful, you'd be looking for this key level to break right here. So once you have this zone horizontally in this ascending zone, that is where you're going to be looking for your continuation pattern to the downside. In here is pretty risky. And then this is the highest level of dependability that you can have for a short, in my opinion. Because then at that point, you'd be looking for a pretty large head and shoulders on Ethereum as well, where you have your left shoulder right here, and then you have your head right here. And then this would be the retest zone for your right shoulder, and then this would be the major breakout zone, but then you'd be looking for an entry on the right shoulder into the neckline, and then obviously if the neckline breaks, you'd be looking for a larger move to the downside. And then $85 was that, around $86, $85 was that main key level for Ethereum that it's been holding for a while. So obviously I don't know if it's going to get there. We would need to see a huge move to the downside, like a massive capitulation of over 60%. But it is very, very dependent on these equities and how investors are going to be looking at this move to the downside. We are seeing a little bit of a pickup. We are looking at the S&P 500 futures there, and it does look like it is picking up here. Quick look at the 4-hour. We see that massive sell-off throughout the day. Not a single green candle on a 4-hour chart or a 4-hour time frame. That's pretty crazy. Russell 2000, which is a small cap index, is bouncing slightly here. So overall, we are seeing definitely some buy pressure coming into the market, and we don't want to be too quick to assume that this is going to be another big sell-off. Buyers are definitely stepping in as of right now. I think we could see a little consolidation. If we form like a nice bearish flag, and if it breaks the low of that bearish flag, that is going to be, in my opinion, a time when we want to be looking for short opportunities. But in terms of Ethereum, I don't think it's there yet. We'd want to see a few things occur before we really take a stab at any shorts. But I would not be looking to long and buy that dip in terms of a trade. Investments, dollar cost average, I think that's the best way. But in terms of a potential trade, I think we're in a pretty peculiar place, and we just want to wait until a little bit more of a confirmation from either the sellers moving to the downside or really, really moving to the upside, where you see a risk-on environment again. You want to see Aussie dollar, New Zealand dollar, you want to see stuff like GBP go up as well. You want to see exotics like Turkish lira, which has high interest. You have peso, Mexican peso. You have the South African rand. When investors are looking, or at least in the FX market, you can have carry costs and use that to your advantage, because you can have positive carry or negative carry, and you can actually make money from that. And then you have stuff like the equities market. Obviously, it's a speculative investment in equities, but if markets are going up, if the sentiment is positive, you'll be able to make money, and you're looking for that risk on sentiment if crypto is going to continue. Similar to what we had in March, if you see stuff like speculative investments start to sell off, like BTC is highly correlated to the Russell 2000, which is more speculative than the S&P 500. Something to note, right? So that's what we're going to be looking for in the next handful of days. So wouldn't expect some level of consolidation after this big move overall within the global markets, but it's definitely too early, in my opinion, to say that this is a massive reversal and we really got to get on these shorts to catch the very, very top. If this is going to be another move to the downside, I'm going to expect it to be pretty aggressive, because we're kind of in a euphoria at this point. You're looking at some stocks going up like 100%, like in a week or even a day. It's pretty crazy right now. We went from recession to depression to global pandemic to people saying that we're Great Depression levels, and then we just had the biggest bounce like I've ever seen ever. It's crazy, but we just got to play the price action. I think it's definitely at a midpoint, a pretty key level that we're going to be coming into here soon. But it's definitely a situation that we need to have patience in. So, great question. Hey bro, nice to join you live. How are you? I'm doing well. Thanks for coming in. I got 4 people here. So let's look at the total too. This is going to be the overall cryptocurrency market cap excluding Bitcoin. So this is just showing the altcoin market cap, basically. Ethereum included, right? So it's going to be pretty similar to Ethereum overall, because Ethereum has a large market cap. First thing that we notice, we're making lower highs. We are forming a really solid base at around 37 billion. Great to see within the past couple years, but overall we're making lower highs. We can connect those lower highs like so, and we can really easily tell that we're right at a key level of resistance. So not great to see, obviously. We could have one little more pop if we do put it at the candle closures, but it is really close to the series of lower highs. If we put it on the next high, that will definitely make it look a little better. There we go. So we see a series of lower highs, and in my opinion, I don't love that recovery. Usually you get some sort of basing pattern. You know, you get some, this is a very nice basing pattern where you get an ascending triangle, where you get a very, very steady, slow crawl at the end, but then you get a huge spike consolidation series. You made a higher low, but you see this horizontal zone hold. Once you break it, shorts get out, buyers come back, step in, and then you get a huge move to the upside. This was like an ascending wedge that just melted to the upside. You even see bases like this, where you get a descending zone here, and then you get a nice little squeeze like this that you can work with it, right? But and you can get a retest right here. But this, in my opinion, was a pretty hard reversal to call. That's just me. That's just how I trade. But we'll see where it goes from there. I do expect some level of a sell-off if equities do start to fall off the key level of support like we've talked about. So that's basically the view right now that I have. Not going to get into the smaller time frames of this, obviously, but what we will do is actually see if anyone has any questions involving some alts or whatever time frame or chart that we are wanting to look at. So I'll just take a quick look at some of the questions here given on TikTok. If you have any questions, drop them in, and then I'll be able to answer them. Hi, bro. Tell me, did you trade Forex? Any thoughts on play? Carlos, I'll answer your question first. I do trade Forex, yes. Pogpaz, any thoughts on play? I do not know what play is. Not sure. I don't know much about it. All right, so just going to look over some questions. If you got any questions, drop them in the comments. What will market do tomorrow from Sheldo? I personally think it will consolidate a little bit. Let's just look at the previous market sell-off that we had back in March. So we go to our S&P, and then let's go to 4 hour initially, and just look at how aggressive the sell-off was. Actually, let's look at the daily and see where it actually sold off. So we had our one massive day. So this is the first initiation day. 3.2% to the downside, and then this one's around a little bit more, 6%. That was a big move. We're getting a little bit of a retracement. Yeah, if it breaks this 29.85 zone, that's going to be very bearish, in my opinion. 29.85. So if it holds that, that's great. But if as soon as it breaks that, I'm going to be definitely looking for shorts on anything that is a speculative risk on asset, basically, that I trade on a regular basis. All right, so that's my answer. Let's continue on here. Up or down? So yeah, let's look at the smaller time frames. I can't give you that right now. I don't know. I would say we would bounce, to be honest. So I would say we're going to go a little bit up tomorrow. Not by much. I don't think we're going to get a massive bounce. But that's my personal thought. I think there's a lot of hope and optimism in the air still. Just we've seen such an insane rally, but you never know. I'm keeping an eye out. I am available to basically act very quickly, so I don't really need to decide only at a single moment in time. Okay, so that's going to basically be the video for this crypto market update. Don't really see any other comments that or questions that have any comments to go over. So thank you very much for coming on today. Hopefully you have a good rest of the week. Hopefully you stay safe. Hopefully you are doing good in financial markets, health, whatever, and everything that you can. And hopefully see you in the next live stream. Until next time, have a good one.